My golden sister illegally entered my house with her children, so I called the police. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to write a story like this. But here I am. Not because I want sympathy, and not because I'm trying to start drama. I just need to put this somewhere. To say it out loud. To remind myself that I wasn't crazy for doing what I did. My name's Galen, and I'm 34. I've been working as a veterinary technician for just over a decade now. I'm not rich. I don't wear suits or own stocks or have a Tesla in my driveway. But I take care of animals, and I do it well. My job is hard, messy, and often heartbreaking, but I love it. I've always loved it. For the last 10 years, I've lived like a monk with one goal: buy a house. A place that was mine. No roommates. No sharing space. Just my own door to lock at night and my own coffee to brew in the morning. That goal shaped everything I did. While most of my friends were upgrading their lives, buying better cars, going on vacations, moving in with partners, I stayed put. I drove a clunky '07 Corolla with 180,000 miles on it. I lived in a shoebox of an apartment with a window that didn't close properly. I meal prepped cheap food every Sunday and shopped like a coupon ninja. I wasn't miserable. I had a plan. And every time I transferred money from my paycheck into my savings account, I reminded myself why I was doing it. But here's the part that complicates all that. My older sister, Darla, 37, lives like she's allergic to planning. She's got 3 kids, each with a different last name, and not one of the fathers is in the picture. She's bounced between jobs, most of them short-lived and not a good fit, and most recently started calling herself a lifestyle consultant. Which, near as I can tell, means taking selfies with inspirational quotes and convincing people to buy essential oils. And through it all, my parents, especially my dad, have treated her like she can do no wrong. I can't even count how many times I heard, "She's trying her best," or "You need to understand what it's like raising 3 kids alone," or "She's your sister, you should help her." Meanwhile, when I needed help during school, I was told to figure it out. When I skipped meals to pay rent, nobody knew. Or asked. Still, I tried not to carry resentment. I really did. I kept my head down, did my job, and saved like my life depended on it. And then, last year, it happened. I closed on a small house, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, and a backyard that needed work but had potential. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Mine. The first night I slept there, the place was empty. I had a sleeping bag, a half-eaten sandwich, and the kind of peace I didn't even realize I'd been missing. I wasn't expecting a parade or congratulations. But a week after I moved in, I got a call from Dad. "Galen," he said, "I've been meaning to talk to you." That never leads anywhere good. He cleared his throat. "Your sister's going through a rough patch. They're being evicted. She needs a place to stay." I paused. Then he added, "You've got space now. 3 bedrooms, right? It'd just be for a little while. Until she figures something out." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just said, no. It wasn't out of spite. It was because I knew exactly what would happen. It would start with "a little while," and end with her squatting in my house for years while I tiptoed around her and her kids. She'd use my groceries, mess up my routines, and make me the bad guy anytime I asked for basic respect. Dad didn't take that well. "You're being selfish," he said. "You're living alone in a 3-bedroom house while your sister and her children are about to be homeless. She's had 10 years of bailouts, Dad. I'm not another one." He didn't speak to me for 2 weeks after that call. I figured the situation had settled. That Darla had moved in with them again or found another friend to lean on. I figured wrong. 3 days later, I came home from work to find the front door cracked open. I felt that cold, electric panic that anyone who's ever had their space violated knows. I pushed the door open. Darla was standing in my kitchen, unpacking groceries. The kids were sitting on the living room floor, watching cartoons on my TV. "Surprise," she said, grinning like this was some kind of joke. "Dad gave me the key. He said you just needed time to come around." That key. The spare I'd left at my parents' house just in case. My stomach sank. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You need to leave." She blinked. "What?" "Galen, come on. It's not a big deal. You've got the room. This house is perfect. It even has a yard. You're not staying here. You weren't invited. You're trespassing." You're kicking out your niece and nephews? Her voice started rising. Your own family? I called the police. They arrived, and I calmly explained the situation. I showed them the deed, told them she'd entered without my permission. The officers were polite, but because she hadn't broken in and was technically related, they couldn't remove her without an eviction order. I gave her 2 hours. She packed slowly, muttering about what a terrible brother I was, how I'd changed, and how my future kids, if I ever had any, would hate me for turning away family in need. Then she left. I changed the locks that same night. Installed cameras the next day. Called a lawyer by the end of the week. The thing about standing up for yourself, really standing up, not just muttering behind closed doors, is that it doesn't feel good at first. It feels awful. Even though I knew I was right to make Darla leave, the house felt heavier after that. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me she'd been there without asking. My space, my sanctuary, had been invaded. And now I had to live with the aftershocks. The day after she left, I got a text from my dad. You crossed a line. Don't bother showing your face around here. Simple. Cold. Final. No room for questions. No invitation to talk. Just the kind of message that leaves you staring at your phone a few extra seconds, hoping maybe you misread it. I didn't respond. But I won't lie, his words dug deep. My whole life, I've tried to keep things smooth with my family. I was never the loud one. Never the troublemaker. I was the one who fixed things quietly, stayed out of fights, paid my way. So being labeled the villain? That hurt more than I expected. A few days later, I met with the lawyer. His name was Mr. Denton, a calm, measured guy who'd clearly seen all kinds of family fallout. He listened, nodded a lot, and didn't flinch when I told him my dad had handed over my house key without permission. That's more common than you think, he said. Family assumes shared access. Legally, that's not how it works. He drew up a cease and desist letter for both my sister and my parents. It wasn't threatening, it was firm. It basically said, do not enter this property again without written consent, or legal action will follow. I mailed them. The fallout came fast. Darla took it to social media, naturally. She didn't use my name, but anyone who knew us could put it together. There were photos of her kids with captions like, all they needed was a roof. What they got was rejection. Or, some people value their square footage more than their blood. The comments rolled in. Strangers telling her she was brave. Friends agreeing I was cold-hearted. A few people I hadn't talked to in years messaged me directly, some kindly, some not. One said, wow, didn't expect this from you. Another said, proud of you for finally setting boundaries. Those meant something. Because the worst part wasn't Darla's posts, it was the silence from the rest of my family. No one asked for my side. No one called to ask what really happened. It was easier for them to believe her version, because it fit the narrative they were used to. Galen's quiet, Galen's stable, Galen will always come around. But this time I didn't. I kept to myself. Kept working. Kept living. And slowly, something started to shift. The quiet didn't feel so heavy. The house didn't feel haunted. It started to feel like mine again. I replaced the doorknob she used. Changed the curtains in the living room. Rearranged the furniture. Small things, but they made a difference. They reminded me I wasn't helpless. One night, I found myself sitting on the back steps with a glass of iced tea, just watching the sky fade to dark. It hit me then, this was the first time in a long time that I felt still. Not tense. Not bracing for the next demand. Just still. There's a grief that comes with letting go of people who've known you your whole life. But there's also a strange kind of freedom. Like you finally realize how much weight you've been carrying, just trying to keep everyone else from tipping over. And now, I wasn't doing that anymore. A month passed. Then too. Darla didn't reach out. My parents didn't either. But my cousin Leland did. He'd always been the most level-headed in the family. Quiet like me. The kind of guy who saw things and didn't always say them, but when he did, you listened. He texted out of the blue. Heard some things. Wanted to hear your side, if you're up for it. We got coffee the next day. I told him everything. From the day Dad asked me to take her in, to the moment I found her unpacking groceries in my kitchen. He didn't interrupt. He didn't flinch. When I finished, he just said, yeah, that tracks. I'm sorry you had to be the one to draw the line. That meant more than I could say. Because for once, someone understood that boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about survival. Darla wasn't evil. My parents weren't monsters. But they were stuck in a cycle that relied on someone else, usually me, cleaning up the mess. And when I stopped doing that, it exposed everything they'd been avoiding. They weren't mad because I did something wrong. They were mad because I stopped doing what was convenient. And I could live with that. By the time autumn rolled in, the trees on my street had turned. Everything was gold and red and quiet. The air had that smell, smoky, crisp, familiar, and for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for a holiday filled with tension or fake smiles. I hadn't spoken to my parents since Dad's last message. Not a text. Not a call. And I was starting to accept that maybe we wouldn't speak again. That realization didn't bring relief or grief, it brought clarity. It wasn't just that they were upset. It was that they didn't want to understand. To them, family wasn't a place for boundaries. It was a system. A set of unspoken rules about who gives and who takes, and I had always been the one who gave. When I stopped, the system broke. And in a way, I understood that. Change is hard, especially when it challenges the roles people have built their lives around. But just because I understood didn't mean I had to carry the cost of their denial. Still, I thought about them more than I liked to admit. I'd find myself wondering how my mom was doing. If my dad's blood pressure was under control. If my nephews remembered the dog treats I used to sneak them. I'd scroll past family-size lasagna recipes and think, that used to be a Sunday thing. But the difference now was I didn't let those thoughts lead me backward. I didn't text. I didn't cave. Instead, I leaned into my life. I fixed up the third bedroom and turned it into a reading room. Got into woodworking, small stuff at first, shelves, a stool, a planter box for the porch. I spent Saturdays at the local flea market, selling handmade dog beds and donating part of the proceeds to the shelter where I adopted Gus. That dog, by the way, he was thriving. Old, slow, a little grumbly, but every time I came home, he greeted me like I'd been gone for a year. He became my shadow, my silent reminder that loyalty doesn't demand sacrifice, it returns it. Then, right before Thanksgiving, I got another message. This time from Aunt Jolene, my dad's sister. She was always the odd one out in the family, more independent, more outspoken. I heard what happened, her message said. Just wanted to say I've been through something similar. You're not wrong. Let me know if you ever want to talk. I called her that evening. We spoke for over an hour. She told me about her own fallout with her parents, how they always favored her brother. How she once loaned money to family she never saw again. How she learned, eventually, that drawing a boundary isn't a betrayal, it's an act of self-respect. Her voice was steady. Not bitter. Just experienced. You'll miss them, she said. And sometimes you'll doubt yourself. But if the only version of peace they offer requires you to disappear, it's not peace at all. That stuck with me. I didn't go to Thanksgiving that year. Neither did Darla, as it turned out. She posted about doing a Friendsgiving instead, lots of curated photos, perfectly staged dishes, the works. It looked nice. It also looked empty in that way you can't Photoshop away. I didn't comment. Didn't look for long. Instead, I hosted my own small meal. Just me, Gus, and two co-workers, Nico and Bryn, who didn't have family in town. We cooked together, played cards, talked about nothing and everything. It wasn't loud. It wasn't full of tradition. But it was real. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing. I felt like I was just living. That night, after they left, I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the last plate, and caught myself smiling. Not because things were perfect. But because I had stopped waiting for other people to fix what they had broken. I had stopped asking for permission to be okay. That winter, I built a bench for the front porch. Simple, sturdy, nothing flashy. Just something to sit on with a cup of coffee while the world turned cold and still. And as snow started to fall in early December, I realized something. I had everything I needed. Not because I had cut people out, but because I had stopped letting them walk over me to feel taller. I still loved my family. That didn't change. But love without respect? That's not family. That's pressure dressed up in tradition. And I wasn't carrying it anymore. The new year arrived the same way all real change does, not with fireworks or declarations, but quietly. One morning, I woke up and realized the weight I'd been carrying wasn't as heavy anymore. My house had settled. Not just in a physical sense, but emotionally. The air felt different. The furniture no longer felt like placeholders in a life that might be interrupted. Everything belonged. Everything stayed where I left it. Then, in late January, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. An actual, handwritten letter. It was from my mom. Her handwriting was still neat, the same loops and slants she used when leaving notes in my lunchbox back in middle school. The envelope had no return address, but I knew it was hers the moment I saw it. The letter wasn't long. She didn't apologize in the first sentence, or even the second. But by the third paragraph, I could feel something shifting. I don't know if I handled things the right way. Maybe we were too quick to judge. Maybe we didn't see how much you've carried, or how long you've been doing it. She wrote about the house. How proud she had been but didn't know how to say it. She mentioned Darla's kids, how they were doing okay, how Darla had started a part-time job at a preschool nearby. Then she added, "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just wanted you to know I miss you. And I'm starting to understand." That last sentence broke something open in me. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to call her. But I folded the letter and set it on my nightstand. And for the first time, I believed that maybe, just maybe, someone in my family had actually heard me. Not just listened. Heard. I didn't write back right away. I let the words sit. A few days later, I bumped into my cousin Leland again. He told me that Darla was still sharing her version of the story online, but not as aggressively. That most people had stopped engaging. That she seemed tired. "She's not thriving without the attention," he said gently. "I'm not surprised," I replied. But I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel victorious. I felt detached. Like I'd finally stopped participating in a play I never auditioned for. Still, something in me softened. I started drafting a short letter to my mom. I kept it simple. I told her I was doing well. That I appreciated her reaching out. That I wasn't angry anymore, but I still needed space. I said I hoped she was taking care of herself. I mailed it the next day. No expectations. No strings. Weeks passed. Then, a new postcard arrived, no message this time, just a photo of a dogwood tree in bloom. That was her way. Subtle. Symbolic. I smiled. In early spring, I saw Darla at the grocery store. We made eye contact near the produce aisle. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked over. She looked different. Not worse. Just real. Less polished than her online persona. A little more tired. A little more quiet. "Hey," she said. "Hey. I didn't expect to see you here." "Same." She glanced at my basket. "Still buying those weird frozen veggie burgers?" I chuckled. "They've grown on me." We stood there in silence. For once, she didn't fill it with spin. "I've been working," she said finally. "It's not a lot, but it's mine." I nodded. "Good." Another pause. "Then, I know I made things worse." I pushed. "I expected you to just let it happen." "Yeah," I said. "You did." She looked down. "I'm sorry, Galen." There was a time when I would have needed that apology to be longer. Louder. Accompanied by tears or change or public acknowledgement. But now? Now I just needed it to be honest. "Thank you," I said. "I hope you're doing okay." "I'm trying." That was enough. We didn't hug. We didn't exchange numbers. We just nodded and went on with our lives. But something had shifted. And over the next few weeks, more little moments like that followed. A quick message from a second cousin. A like on one of my posts from an old family friend. Nothing big, but enough to know that time was doing its work. And I was still standing. By late spring, the world had started blooming again. The dogwood trees in my neighborhood exploded in soft white blossoms. Gus, older now, preferred shorter walks and longer naps in the sun. I had built raised garden beds in the backyard, my own little experiment in tomatoes and cucumbers, and I found myself waking up early just to check how everything was doing. The quiet of my home wasn't emptiness anymore. It was choice. And I had learned to love it. I still hadn't spoken to my dad. The letter from Mom and the quiet apology from Darla had started to mend the surface, but my father, Douglas, remained a closed door. Maybe he was waiting for me to knock. Maybe he thought I owed him that. But I wasn't in a hurry to reopen what had taken me so long to step away from. Then, in mid-June, I got a call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Galen? It was my mother's voice. Soft. Hesitant. Yeah. Your dad had a fall. My stomach dropped. She explained it quickly. He'd slipped while fixing something in the garage, hit his head, was taken to the ER. He was stable, but they were keeping him for observation. She didn't ask me to come. She just informed me. And maybe that's why I did go. Not out of guilt. Not out of obligation. But because I wanted to choose how I showed up, not because someone else decided for me. When I walked into the hospital room the next afternoon, it was quiet. He was awake. No machines beeping dramatically. Just that antiseptic smell and a window view of a parking lot. He looked up when I entered. No surprise in his face. No anger. Just recognition. Didn't think you'd come, he said. I didn't come for you, I replied. I came for me. He nodded. Fair. There was a long pause, the kind that used to stretch into tension. But this time, it just sat there, neutral. I've been thinking, he said finally. About what I said. What I did. I waited. I thought I was protecting family. Holding us together. But I think I was just holding control. You did everything right. And I didn't want to see it, because it meant admitting I'd been wrong about a lot of things. It wasn't a grand apology. It didn't erase the years of imbalance. But it was honest. I know it's late, he added. Too late, maybe. Maybe, I said. But I appreciate you saying it. We didn't hug. He didn't cry. We just sat there in the stillness, two men quietly letting go of something we'd been dragging too long. That night, I stood on my porch, looking up at the stars. Gus lay beside me, his breathing slow and steady. And I realized I was done waiting for things to go back to how they were. Because they weren't supposed to. I had learned what peace felt like. I had learned how to say no and survive the silence that followed. I had learned that protecting your space doesn't make you cruel, it makes you whole. Family, I've come to believe, isn't just blood. It's not who shares your name. It's who respects your boundaries. Who celebrates your growth. Who sees your lines and doesn't ask you to erase them for convenience. That summer, I hosted a small cookout. Not for show. Not to prove anything. Just for the people in my life who respected me for who I was. Leland came. So did Aunt Jolene. A few co-workers. Even Darla dropped by briefly with her kids. She brought a salad and didn't ask to stay late. She didn't bring drama. Just a quiet smile and a simple, thanks for the invite. I watched the kids play in the yard, Gus following them slowly, and I felt it settle deep in my chest. This is mine. Not just the house. But the life. The choices. The calm. I didn't sacrifice who I was to keep a seat at a table that always asked me to shrink. I built my own table. And at it, no one has to beg for room. That's the ending, I guess. Not a dramatic one. Not a perfect one. Just a man, a house, a dog, and a life he built with both hands. And peace earned, not given. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.